this webinar and answering questions during the Q&A break. We are waiting for a couple of our attendees to join. They're still joining. So while we wait for others to join, let us show you how you can use this webinar to ask questions and access the handouts. Now, as you can see, there is a panel on the right-hand side of your screen with an arrow. Please use the arrow that is represented in an orange box to collapse or open the panel. Also, you can type in your questions in the question area and click on send or enter. We will receive your questions and answer them either by typing them in or verbally during the Q&A break. If we miss out on any of the questions today, we will send you a response via email after this webinar. Also, a copy of today's webinar is available in the handout section. Please click on the PDF copy by clicking on the title of the handout as shown here. This handout contains links to individual help guides, knowledge-based articles, and for each of the topics that we are covering today. All of you have been put on mute in order to avoid any confusion during this presentation. But please feel free to use the chat box to send us any messages. Let's see how many of you have joined. Okay. Since most of you have joined, let us start with a brief of this training webinar today. The topic for today is Site Administration, Part 2 of the 3-part series. This is Additional Site Setup Functions. We have with us our lovely Christine Smith, who will be our trainer for today and will go over all the relevant areas under this topic. The duration for this webinar is 1 hour. I will now pass over the mic to Christine to start the training. Thank you, everyone. All yours, Christine. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Maureen, for that fine introduction. So we do want to go ahead and get started with our webinar today. So as it was mentioned, this is part 2 of our administration series. We had part 1 last month, and now part 2, we're going to be covering some of the additional key functions that affect your site as a whole. So we're going to talk about additional site settings in the administration tab so that you can have a better understanding of what those are all about. And so you'll have questions such as, how do I change sponsoring organization? Where can I find what dates are being used to determine my academic year, my fiscal year period? How do I create status details? How do I deactivate ones that I'm no longer using? And then the pop-up messages. A lot of times you'll see like those pop-up or those toast messages that pop up while you're going through certain functions on the site. So we're going to talk about how to change those as well if you don't like the message that it is presenting. So who's going to benefit? Of course, this is going to be any of your global administrators out there that are responsible for site maintenance. So this is predominantly global admins, not department admins, that will be doing these functions. We're going to cover the topics of managing your sponsoring organization, you're managing your academic fiscal years, managing search filters, status details, how to set your master application template. We'll touch on what that is. Manage control labels, and then manage system messages. So for the first 3 sessions, we'll talk about those. Then we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break. And at that time, that's when Maureen will answer any questions that you've entered into the system while we were doing the presentation. We'll go through that, take a break, and answer some of those. And at the very end, we'll do the same after the next 4 topics, and then we'll do a final Q&A and answer those questions as well, and then close out the session for today. So let's go ahead and get started with our very first topic, which is manage sponsoring organization. So what is sponsoring organization? So every one of you will have at least one sponsoring organization, which will be yourself. But some of our clients out there, which you may be one of them, have a need to have more than one organization that they're maintaining. Maybe you're a community foundation and you maintain the site for multiple organizations, maybe a couple of different foundations within your area you're maintaining, and you want to keep those separate. So sponsoring organizations allow you to do that. If you're a university, sponsoring organizations allow you to departmentalize so that only certain departments can have access to certain applications and funding sources. So how to set those up, of course, I'm going to go ahead and go out to the site here. And here under the site, I'm logged in on a scholarship site. This is the same functionality for scholarships and grants. It's going to be the same functions. So under the administration tab, so I'm logged in as an admin, and I'm going to go to the administration tab here. And this is the tab that predominantly all the items we'll be covering today are under this administration tab. That's why we say the global admin is the one who performs these roles. You will see I do have a few things that you might not see on your site because, of course, I'm a main user with the community force, and so I'm going to have some functionalities that you don't have here in this bar, so don't be alarmed if you see something that you don't have, but it's because I am a super user of this site, and so I'm going to have a lot of stuff that you don't have. So for under the administration, so what we're going to cover is some of the key things. So last time we talked about the site settings. So now we're going to talk about key functionalities in regards to managing the sponsoring organization. So managing the sponsoring organization, I'm going to click that tab here. And when you first come in, you're going to see this is blank because if you need to add a sponsoring organization, then you would just come up here and type in that sponsoring organization and then be sure to click save. Now you're going to see with sponsoring organizations, so I have a multiple ones here. I have the organization name. I have a little bit of information. This is what goes in this box here so that when you're looking at your sponsoring organization, why is it there? What is it used for? And then over here, you can delete sponsoring organizations. However, if you've used a sponsoring organization, do not delete it because it will delete all the data that they were attached to, all of the applications, the funds, the users that had that organization will no longer be present there for them. So sponsoring organizations show up in 3 areas where you have to maintain that. It shows up in the fund. So that allows you, if you have more than one organization maintaining funds and you only want users of that organization to have access to those funds, then when you do the fund setup, you're going to want to set the specific organization. Same with the application setup and the general information. I will go to those here in a minute. In the general information, you have a sponsoring organization. Only individual user accounts that have that sponsoring organization would be able to access that application. And then also in the fund setup, when you set up user setup, when you're creating user profiles, you have an area where you can tie them to a sponsoring organization as well. So when creating the sponsoring organization, we have the name and the information, but you're also going to notice a logo here. So the logo, do not confuse this logo with your main organization's logo. This logo is for that specific entity. So if you're maintaining applications for multiple foundations or multiple organizations and you want their logo to be present on some of the items, this is where you would upload that logo. So like for instance, here I have my main institution campus. If I go to the edit here, this is where I do have a logo attached. Now you'll notice every one of you, if you just have one organization, when you come in here, you will have your organization as a sponsoring org. You do have to have at least that one, but don't put your logo. If you're the only one, don't put your logo here. Put it on your site settings because that site setting is where that logo shows up here. But this is just for demonstration purposes, or you can see this is where if you have multiple organizations you're maintaining and you want their logo to show up, then this is where you would upload that logo as well. So when I say show up, where does that show up? Well, if I go back here to the home, when applicants are searching for funding sources, then when they search for a funding source, it will allow them to, so if I just go here, let me just go here, we'll get into this in a minute here. Search sponsoring org. You'll notice here's a logo next to it. So that'll help identify that that's for that specific organization. Now, when using searching for a specific organization, so I'm going to go to Administration tab here. So when applicants come to the search page, which is this page here, in the site settings, you would have to have this as the search page. You can have it to where if they are only looking for grants or scholarships or funding sources for a specific organization, you can then add that to the search page. They can search for that specific organization and only see the applications for that specific organization. Now, how do you tie everybody together, all the funds, all the applications, all the users to specific organizations once you've created your sponsoring organizations? So here under administration, I'm going to go to the first one. So the first thing is users. So all of your users have a sponsoring organization tied to them. So for instance, if I click on the edit for this user here, and I scroll down, I have sponsoring organization, and whatever sponsoring organizations are selected under that user, that's the applications and the funds that they have access to view. They can only view those. So that's where that sponsoring organization comes in on a user. Now, this is where the grant site's a little different. Under the grant site, don't confuse, oh, they kicked me out. Hold on here. You've got two different organizations as a grant user. So the grant users, you have applicants who are organizations that are applying. So don't confuse a sponsoring organization with the actual applicant's organization name. So here I am on a grant site. I have organization, and that's the name of the organization that's applying. If I go into the edit, you have that's this one. This is the organization that's applying. However, over here, this is the sponsoring organization that is the organization that they belong to and what they would be applying for. So if this is left blank, it defaults to all. If you actually select some, that it only allows access to those organizations. So that's in the user setup. The other place where you add an organization is in the Manage Funds application, the Manage Funds screen setup. So when you're setting up, you're going to notice here I have a sponsoring organization. This is the organization that owns this funding source. So if you have different departments, you would put the department that owns that and anybody who needs to have access to that fund. So maybe you're a global admin, so you've created a sponsoring organization just for you so that you can access all of that data as well. You would need to make sure you have that on your user account so that you can access that sponsoring organization. So here in the funding, I'm going to click on the name here. And then if I go into the edit, so every fund would have to be tied to its correct organization. And then I go to sponsoring organization. This is where then you would select, after you've created your organization, you would select the ones that belong to that specific funding source and can have access to it. Same with the application. If I go home, here's your applications. Notice they all have sponsoring organizations tied to them. Where do you add that? If I go to application form, click on the name, application settings, under general information, when you're creating that application form, when you first create it, or in the general information, if you didn't do it when you created, you have the sponsoring organization, and then this is where you select who has access to that sponsoring organization. So also one other area where sponsoring organization can come into play that some of our users have used it is in the application invitation. So maybe you want to create, some of our clients will create groups of individuals, user accounts, and put them under a specific group that they want to invite to specific applications. When they do that, what they do is they create the group under a sponsoring organization. They then go to their users, tie all of their applicant users or user accounts to that organization. And then what they do is when they come here to the application invitation, they have the ability to filter by sponsoring organization. So then they only get that group of individuals, of applicants or individuals that they can invite to this application form based on that group. So that's another way that some of our users use sponsoring organizations, is to invite certain applicants to certain applications. They're in that group. They can come here, filter by that sponsoring organization, and then they only get those applicants that are filtered for that organization to apply to the application form and invite them. Okay, so that's it for manage sponsoring organization. So the next topic we want to discuss is managing academic fiscal year. So what is an academic fiscal year? Well, that is your ledger year, the year that you do your accounting for. And every application and fund has to have that so that it knows what's the fiscal period, the award period that you're going to be awarding a specific application. So applicants come in and apply, but what's the award period that you're going to be paying out those you're doing the application for? What's the payout period that is going to be used? So fiscal years, of course, a lot of you don't have January to December. So what we do have is the ability with academic years to set your periods on the site. So when you first got on board, that was something that would be set up by implementation. If you did self-implementation, that's something you would have to set up for yourself. But where that's located, and then I'll show you how everything's tied together with that. It is located under the administration, if you're wondering what's your fiscal period set at. And then here, manage academic years. And I think maybe in the grant side, let's just look here. In the grant side, it does say academic year, but if you want to set your fiscal year period, that you can rename that. We'll show you how to do that later on in the session under the controls. So if I go home and administration, manage academic years. This will show you what your academic period is. Now, this is the award period. Everything is tied by the award period. So as soon as it opens up here, let me do the scholarship side. It might be a little bit quicker. Yep. Okay. So right now I have January to December. And then what's the period? 11-12. I can scroll all the way down here. I have January to December is my 24-25 academic period. Now, if you look at this and it's not right, and you've already done your application, you've already started taking applicants, or you've already awarded, do not make any changes to this because you will break the award period that you have. So if you're looking at this on your site and you realize you don't have the correct academic period and you've already done awards, you've already taken applications, contact support, enter a support ticket, and tell them you need assistance in changing your academic years. Your awards aren't falling in the right periods and you need assistance. Do not try to do it yourself because it will break some items. It'll break the awarding, it'll break when things are awarded, and fiscal dates. So this is very important. This drives a lot with the award process. This tells the system when you're looking at application funds and you're looking at award periods, what was the period this for, like 2023, what was my awards out of a specific fund? That's what it's looking at, is what was the fiscal period tied to that fund, and then what was the application. So when you're creating application funds, initially creating them, when you create a new fund, there is a field. So I'm going to go in here. I'm just going to go to the edit here. I'm going to click on the fund name. And you're going to see when you first create a fund in the edit, there is the place for the annual budget academic year, and then this is the period. And then if you need to add more, you just hit the little green icon, and that allows you to add more periods. Every year you award, then this fund is tagged. Now, once the fund's created and you tie a fund to an application form, the application is what drives this all. So whatever the application fiscal period is set at when you create your application, as soon as you link a fund to that application, the application will default to the next academic year. So what I'm saying is, if you have funds created and they're tied to applications, as soon as you create that application that it's tied to, it's going to pick up the fiscal year. So if I create this application, this fund, and I already have an application and I come here and I select an application, whatever application I select, it's going to default to the academic year that's on the application. The application academic year is what drives when the funding is going to happen. So When you create your application form, that's what's important also is when you go home, I'm going to go to the home page here. And when you're creating an application, so I'm going to just click on create new here real quick so you can see where it's at. You have this academic year. So this drives everything going forward. As soon as you tie a funding source to this application, depending on what you have here in academic year, that's what the system's going to say is your award period. So when you're creating your application form, always make sure you get the correct academic year that you're going to be awarding your applicants when you do your award process. The system, when you're creating an application, it's going to default. It's going to do a begin accepting applicant and a deadline date. It's going to look at those two dates and it's going to say, okay, that date and this date fall within, and it's going to go out and look at that chart and say, what do the dates fall into? What period do they fall into? And whatever date that is, it's going to automatically create the academic year. Now, you're going to notice when I click on that, it'll auto create it, but maybe I'm taking applications in 2024, but I'm not awarding till 2025. So since I'm taking applications and my deadline falls in 2024, it's going to automatically go to the 24-25 period, but my award maybe is in the 25-26. So I can default that and I can select it. And then once I select it and I create my application and I click save, that's what it's going to have as the academic year. Then when I go in and I start adding funds, so if in my application form, maybe when I create the application, it says select the fund. When I select the fund, it's going to automatically go to that fund and roll the date based on what that application says. When I am creating a one-to-many application, I have multiple funds tied to it. And I go into application settings and I go down here into manage fund, assign application funds. All of the funds that I assign here in the assign application funds, or when I create that, I do my rollover and I create that those funds, I say attach all these funds in that rollover process, it's going to go to this application. It's going to go out to the general information, look at the date, and it's going to put all of this funding that I add down here under the academic year that I have set in the general information screen when I created that application. So here, if I go to general information, so if this one I want to know what's my period, right now it's picking up academic year 24-25. And so all of these funds that I've assigned are going to be in the award period 24-25. That's when it's going to be awarding all of these. Any monetary amount here that I put in here is going to fall within the 24-25 period. So that's academic year and how that functions in the system. It's a very important element on the site because that's what tells the system when the award is taking place. So then when you go in and maybe you're looking at your funding sources and you're using the 360, so maybe I want to look here, my one-to-many, not the one-to-many because that's not going to have any awarding, but here in my one-to-one, maybe I want to look at my one-to-one and I want to look at the awards. It's looking at that fiscal period that's tied to the application and giving me that data. So here, maybe I want to know it's 24-25. If I had any awards, I don't have any on this specific application, or I can do all. That's what it's looking at. That's where it's getting that fiscal period to know when awards were made. So anywhere that you have a report where you're looking at academic year, that's what it's looking at, is what's based on that application. Okay, so that's manage academic fiscal years. So the next thing we want to talk about is going to be manage search filters. So search filters are not to be confused with fund criteria on an actual application form. What search filters they are a search feature that is on our site. So if you have if you have 50 to 100, you have multiple applications going live at the same time, especially if you're universities, and your applicants coming in aren't eligible for all of those applications, you can actually create search filters on your site. Now, search filters are universal. So there's 20 of them that you're allowed to set. And on the site, when you first get it, we do have some pre-designed ones to give you an idea of how they're used. Search filters. So if I go to the site here, when an applicant comes to your site and they're in the search page. So there's two things that have to be set to be able to use search filters. And in the administration tab, you need to be able to, applicants need to be able to, more than likely in your site setting, you're going to want to make sure that you have it so that they come to the search page so that they can search by a filter. And then also down here, you want to make sure it says enable search by eligibility criteria, yes. Now, this isn't saying they're eligible. This is just giving them a means to have filters so that they can search on, maybe they have certain majors. You have certain funding for certain majors. They can use you can create a criteria so that when they're searching, they only see for specific majors, something to that extent. So once you have those activated, then when an applicant comes in, they go to that search page. This is the search page here. This is search filters. This is, I've got 4 search filters created. And then the applicant, when searching, can search for whatever it is they want to search for. And then the system will only return the available funding applications that are for the search filter that they did. Okay, so that's what that does. It's just a means to help give them a tool to cull down all of those applications. They're not having to go through this whole view all funding opportunities, scroll, read. You can create those search filters so that they can be matched and search for funding based on the criteria that they want to look for. So if you're using that, then of course you do have to create the search filters. So under the administration tab, you're going to see manage search filters. So I'm going to click on manage search filters. And when you get the site, like I said, there's 20 of them. You're allowed 20 search filters. We have some pre-built out there when you get the site to give you an idea of what they look like and how to build them. Here is the sort order. You can move them up and down with the arrows. So that's the sort order as to where they appear on that page, first, second, third, and so forth. Here, if it says active no, they will not appear on that page. Okay, so maybe you want to activate some of these, but you don't want to activate all 20. Then you make sure they say no, and only the ones you want to activate are the ones that would say yes. So and then the same here, required. So maybe you want to make it required that they search on a specific one. Then if you would change this to no. So in order to update these, you do have to click the edit icon here. And then here is where it would then, as soon as you click that update next to it, it's going to open up that field so you can make all the adjustments you want for your process. Okay, so if you wanted to activate one, you would move this to yes. If you wanted it required, you would have to select yes, otherwise leave it no. And then hidden from search, it's going to be hidden completely. And so if you do have hidden yes, then you do want to make sure that these both, of course, say no. Okay, so that, because if it's hidden, they can't see it, of course. So here's the external name. That's what they're going to see. This is what you as a staff member on the back end would see, the question that's being asked. And then here is the filter type. This is the type of filter. You have a drop down or a multi-select. Those are the two types of filters you're allowed. XML names, not as crucial. For anything here, you don't need to worry about that unless you're using search filters. There is a client that has that, but you're aren't using those, of course, so just ignore that. And then here is where you put the list. So this is the list of items that when they click it, the drop down, or if it's a multi-select, they'll have the listing. They'll have a yes with the box and a no with the box. Depending on what you select here, this is where you put the values. Now notice it's a little different than values when you're creating questions, because this here is just the value. There's no label tied to it. So you can see here, every one of those values, there's the value separated with the tilde, no space, and then the next value, and then a tilde, and then no spaces, and then the next value. So for instance, here is a good example. Here's science. So that's the value that they can select. Or here, and notice no space, but this is a longer value that is in there, and it does have the spaces in it. So you don't space in between values in the tilde, which is this little symbol here, but if the actual statement has spaces, you do want to make sure and put spaces in those. So that's how you create those. And so you can just go through and then edit anything that we have. You can just come here, clear that out, enter new fields, and then go forward. And then, of course, down here, if there's some that haven't been used, you can just come down here and hit edit and then just update those as well. And then make sure to activate those and make sure to save. Then, once you have your search filters created, you do have to go into your funds, because the funds is what they're searching on, not the applications. Remember, the application is tied to the fund, and the fund is what displays in the search pages. So on the fund itself, when you activate search filters, when you're creating your fund, I'm going to click the name here. What's a one-to-one? I want a one-to-one here. Okay. When you're creating the fund in the edit, or when you create the fund, there will be a section that pops up. I scroll to the bottom here. There's contacts, there's donors, and then there's search filters. This is where you create the filters that are tied to that application. So you would click the edit here. And so, of course, remember, I have 4 that I activated. So every one of those that is activated, you do have to, if you're using search filters and you want the system to return results, you do have to go in and set these, or it's going to default to 0 and it won't pick them up. So like here, if you want to edit, so what is your major? So maybe this one is tied to a specific major. I come here, I say, okay, it's only for architecture, and I click OK. However, if it's not for architecture, then I want to make sure and click all and then click OK, so that no matter what they search on, it will return the results in that search that they're doing. So that's what you got to remember. If you're using search filters, you do need to go in on all your funds so that they can find them and set all the correct criteria for those. And then, like I said, if it doesn't apply, make sure and select all, so that no matter what they put in that search criteria, it will return that in the results. So that's search filters. So we're going to go ahead and stop there and address any questions. I see a few that did come in while we were talking, so we'll let Maureen address those, and I'll turn the mic over to you, Maureen.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, so we do have a few questions. One of the questions I think has come up more often is, can I have a separate logo for each sponsoring organization? Yes, as Christine has shown, you can set up the sponsoring organization. I believe she's going to that specific screen. And you can associate separate logos for each of the sponsoring organization. Now, when we say, Christine has already explained, it could be a department within a university or a separate program within your organization. So as Christine is showing, click on edit, and you should have a upload sponsor organization, sponsor logo, sorry. So your fund, if it is associated with this sponsoring organization, when you publish it, you're going to see this fund with its separate logo. So that is one question that is answered. Another one is, we have a different academic or fiscal period than the regular academic year or the fiscal period. Can I make the same change under managed academic years or fiscal years? So academic years, we understand it's related to scholarships. Fiscal years is more related to grants. Either ways, yes, you can go ahead and do that. But I would suggest, if you already have applications in the past, if you've already made some awarding, you've already done some awarding in the past, our suggestion is to be careful to make any changes in the past years. In the future years, please have a look and reach out to our support team. You can make the changes, but you have to be very particular with these changes. Any awarding that's been done, any applications that have been done in the past, it will affect everything in the past. So from here on into the future, you can click on edit as Christine is showing. Click on edit and make the change. So if you have January to June and June to July, pick the start date, pick the end date, and put it in that specific year and click on exit. Just make sure that you're doing it not in any of the previous years. If you still need any help, please feel free to reach out to our support team and they'll help you set this up because they'll do the analytics and get back to you. Okay, that is another question. Can I have the same fund in 2 separate academic years or fiscal periods? I believe yes. I've just answered that question. You can do that. Christine is showing it to us. Manage application funds. As long as it has been set up under fiscal years or academic years, you can create the fund and there, as Christine is showing, click on edit, pick the specific academic year. There we go, as Christine is showing. Add the next academic year, same fund, but use it in different years and associated with that specific application. All right, I'm not going to waste a lot of time, but I think uh, we do not need search filters, but I do not have access to the site settings screen because you might be a department admin, right? How do I turn off the search filters? So either one, reach out to your global administrator. Number one, reach out to your global admin and have her turn it off from the site settings screen. As Christine is showing under administration, first that needs to be turned on off. This is the best approach possible because then you're not making any changes without consulting with the main person who's handling the entire site. Otherwise, if you can get an approval from your global administrator and reach out to us on Zendesk and support, yes, Christine, let's go to site settings. We will make that change for you. Okay. Another question, last one, Christine, I'll get back to you. Yeah, that's one. The one that Christine is showing, enable search by eligibility criteria, click on no, and that will be turned off. So either reach out to your global administrator who's handling everything and have it turned off, or consult with your global administrator and reach out to us on support with an approval, and then we'll turn it off. Last question is, can I add search filters after all these years as we only want US citizens to apply for a new fund or a new program? Well, yes, you can add search filters after all of these years. But additionally, I would suggest add pre-qualification questions to your application settings. That way, none of the non-US citizens come in and apply to your new fund. So that's an additional layer I would say to add. It's not just searching, but you're going to stop the applicants from coming in at all and applying to an application and wasting your time as an administrator handling your application. That's it from my side, I think, Christine. I'll be replying to other clients in the chat.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Maureen, for those explanations and those questions. So we'll
Thank you,
go ahead
Christine.
and move forward now, and we'll talk about status details. So what are status details? If you've been using the site for a while, you're probably familiar with what we have as status. So a status, of course, is system defined. Our system, they're predefined statuses, like a status would be pending submission, under committee review, selected for an award, award accepted, award denied. Those are statuses that our system, depending on certain um, events that happen in the site, move an applicant from status to status. However, status details allows you to create statuses based on your processes so that when they're in between a status, you can tag them with a specific status detail so you know where they are in your process. For instance, maybe you have more than one review process and you need to know were they accepted in round one or declined in round one. You can create a status detail that says accepted round one, declined round one, make those two status details. Then when you're going to do your assignments for round two, you can say only give me the applicants. You can filter then, only give me applicants based on accepted round one. And then those are the ones that are going to come over. So it allows you to filter applicants based on status details. So, or it also allows you to give a tag of some kind when you're in between, maybe you're under committee review, or maybe you've awarded but you haven't done a payout. You can create status details so that you can track where you are in your processes. So for instance here, let me just give you an example of when I talk about status details where you see those. So when you're on any report on our system here that shows a listing of applicants, it might have kicked me out here. Yeah, let's just go back in here. Log in. So like for instance, if I am in this application here, maybe I'm in this application. And in here is a report. So when I say reports, this is what we're looking at. So you see status. So those are our system statuses. But then status detail is where you can actually create your own and tag those applicants. So when you're sitting here, you might see under committee review, and then over here a status detail of maybe round one declined or declined review or something like that. You can create a status detail so that you can track your applicants and see that on this screen. And then once I show you status details, we'll come back here and I'll show you how to actually put a status detail on an applicant. So that's what status details are. So how do you create those? Well, again, administration tab. And like I said, these are defined by you. Under here, under the administration tab, you're going to see manage status details. This is where you create what you want them to be. Now remember, this is universal. So you're going to want to get with your entire organization, your key players, and say, hey, we're going to create status details. What should they be? What's going to work for you, and it's what's going to work for me. Because if you get too many, of course, that list is going to get longer and longer. You're going to have status details that don't apply to one department and that apply to you, and it's going to get confusing because this is a site setting that affects everyone, and it'll show up for everyone. You can't determine sponsoring organization that sees it, and you can't do that. It's all or nothing. So here's status details. Now this is unlimited. There's no limit on how many you can create. And when you get the site, we do have some predefined ones to give you an idea. If you haven't used those, what you can do, of course, the ones that are predefined, if you want to use those up first before you start adding new ones, you can come in here and you can hit the edit over here to the left. And then once you get there, you can just change the name here. You can change the description, and maybe you want to change the sort order. The sort order is when you click on that list of status details, where does it fall in that listing? And then here, you want to make sure if you're using it, it says active yes. So why do we have an active inactive? So if I go back out here, so you're looking at this list, maybe you've used some status details in the past. So you never want to delete a status detail that you've already used. You can edit the name, but remember, any name that you edit, it's going to change it on all of the applicants in the past that you tied that status detail to. So you can edit it, or if you want, you can come up here and create a whole new status detail. But if you do delete a status detail, it will remove it from all the applicants that you've used that on as well. So deletion is only if you're creating a new one, you've never used it, or maybe you want to house clean, you got several superfluous ones that we've created that you're not using. You don't want that in your list. You've never used them. You want to get it out of there to clean up some storage space, then you can delete it in that case. But if you've used one, don't delete it. If you're okay with the name being changed on everyone, then feel free to go to the edit and make the edit. Otherwise, if not, then you do need to create a new status detail over here by add applicant status detail. Here is where you would put the name. Give it a description. The sort order that you want it, I'm going to put it one. I want to make it active, yes, save and exit. And then now we have it there on our listing. Now, if you want to remove, so that maybe you've used status detail in the past and you don't need it anymore, but of course you can't delete it because you don't want to remove it from anyone, then what you do need to do then is go to the edit here. Maybe I don't want this assigned for review anymore, but I don't want to lose the history on old applications. So what you do need to do is go to the edit and then just mark it inactive no. It'll be here on this listing, but it won't be in that drop down anymore. And then make sure to hit save and exit when you make that adjustment. So that's how you can keep them from showing up in the listing. They'll still be here, but they won't be in that listing. And then if you want, you can always go in on that edit so that when you come to this screen, you could just put it to like a high number, and then it'll be, you can rotate it to the bottom in that sort order when you're creating it. So like I could put sort order 11, and then I can get all of my old non-active ones to the bottom of the list if you wanted to do that. And remember, if they're inactive, they're not going to show in the status details on any of those screens in the drop-down listing. It'll be on the applicants that have used them, but in the drop-down listing of status details to select from, they won't be in that listing any longer when you make it inactive. So that's where, this is where you create them. This is where you edit them. This is where you make all the adjustments to what's in that listing. Then once you've made your status details, you can go to any report. So I'm going to go home. I'm just going to go into my Manage Applicants screen again. And then when I'm looking at this data here, if I want to add a status detail, I do have to select the applicant I want to add that to here. Click the filter button here. When I click the filter, over here you'll see change status detail. Then I come down here and I hit this box. So this is giving me all of them that are still active. So if they say not active, then that would be here. So all of these are my active status details. I would select the one I want to change, make sure you're in this change by, and then I hit change status detail. And then here I can put a comment. If I want the applicant to see it, I can, or if I select this, the applicant will see it. If I don't select it, they won't. I'm just going to put test here and then hit save. And then once I do that, you're going to notice now that status detail is on here. And then if I want to filter, when I'm looking at certain things, maybe I want to filter by all of them that have that status detail, I just come over here and then I can click that, and then I can filter and see only those applicants that have that specific filter. Okay, so that's how status details are used. Okay, so that is it for status details. So we will move on to the next item. So the next item is setting the master application template. So what is a master application template? So the master application is an application that's created on your site, and it has every question and every field, and you can even put fun criteria in there if you want, that was ever created on your site. So it's every section, every question, and you can also put fun criteria if you wish to in that master template that allows you to push data. So if you need to make a change across multiple application forms and you don't want to go in one by one and make that change, you can go to the master template, and then in the master template, make the change there and then push the changes down to all the applications that you select in that process. We did have a training on that a while back, so if you need information, you can always refer back to Zendesk and find a video on how that works, how to push data down. So that's how a master template's used. Also, a master template is mandatory if you want to do global reporting or if you are a grant site user and you use agency profile. A master template is mandatory in those two scenarios because global reporting is built off of fields in the master template. So every application you build you want to make sure those fields are in the master template if you need to do a global report on those, because that's what the system looks at to find the field to build global ad hoc reports across multiple application forms. So if you're wanting to know statistical data across multiple application forms, you have to have a master template to be able to build an global ad hoc report to do that. Now, if you create fields and you delete them later, you do not want to delete them in your master template. Never delete fields you've created and used. Do not delete them out of your master template, because if you've used that in a global report or you've used that in the agency profile, it will break it. So when you first get the site, every site application, every site has to have a master template set, and implementation motive has set that for you. But here in the administration tab, if you're wondering what your master template is, you can go to administration. And then under administration, you have set master application template. So when I select that, that will show what the master template is. So right here it says current master application. That's master template application is the name. And in this application, I have every question, every field, every section that was ever built on my site for my applications. So then if I ever need to push something down, I can do it. If I need to build an ad hoc report across multiple applications, I know that field's in my master template and I can do that. So if your master template application, you want to change that, you can. But make note that when you change that application, if you've created global reports, or if you have an agency profile, you're a grant user and using agency profile, you're going to break it, okay? Because it's no longer looking at the correct application because you've switched it out. If you want to switch it out, you can come here to select application, hit select, and then select one of those applications that you want to be your master template going forward, and then set that as your master template. And you're only allowed one master template per site. Okay, so that's if you want to do global reporting, which is this global global ad hoc reports, you do have to have a master template because it looks at those fields, and you can only run reports on the fields that are built in the master template. So if they're not in there, then you do need to make sure that they're in there, and it has to match by XML. XML, it's looking at that XML that's in the master template and saying, okay, you want to report with this application and this application. It's going to go look for that XML that you pulled from the agency, from the master template. If it can't find it, it's not going to be able to run that report because it's looking at the master template to do that. Okay, and then the same with your grant site, your agency profile. When you're creating the agency profile, we did do training on that if you're wondering what that is. Then you do have to have the master template, because when you create that profile, it looks at the master template to get the fields for that profile. And then again, like I said, any field, you can delete it out of the application applicants are applying to, but if it's up in the master template, don't delete it, because if you did delete it, I just want to reiterate this, if you do delete it out of the master template, it won't be available in the global report or the agency profile anymore. Okay, so that is agency profile. The next item are control labels, managing control labels. So what are control labels? So control names are, when you're looking at your site, these items up here, these tabs are control labels. These are the tabs. All of these items right here are considered control labels. You have the ability to change the name on the control labels that are out there. Now, when you do change the name, one thing before you make any changes to your control labels, make a note of what the old name was, because anytime you're looking at any Zendesk guides, any of our help desk guides, I should say, or you're looking at our videos, or you need to do support ticket, we know them as the names that were originally there. So that's what you need to report on when you're asking for support help. What's the name of what it was, because that's what we know it as. If you change it to some crazy name and you say I need help with such and such item, it's not working, we're not going to know what you're talking about unless in that message you give us the path of what it was and the functionality that it does. Then a lot of times we can figure that out. But it's always a good idea to have the mapping before you make the change. Always have that stored somewhere so that you can refer back to it later if you have to. So how do you change those? So again, Administration tab. And we're going to look here in the Administration tab. I'm going to go down here and you're going to look for Manage Control Labels. There it is. So I'm going to select it. Once I select it, you can see the highlighted items here, the ones that are bold. Those are your tabs across the page. When you drill down, maybe on the home page, you click on the application form. There's an evaluation tab, there's an awards tab, there's a notification tab. You've got managed reports, global reports, all of these that are bold or tabs that are either across the top of the page or maybe a sub tab that's once you drill down into something, it's going to be across the page here. Those are tabs. Then under each tab, like here I'm under administration. If I scroll down here, these items here are going to be the menu items that are underneath that specific tab. Okay. And then if you want to change any of them, you go over here to the edit and you can see you have the ability to change the name, the control name, the actual name, the help text. So as I'm hovering over this, see that gold item paragraph that's coming up? That's help text. So you can change the name, change that gold help text, and you also, this little icon right here, you can change the icons as well for those items. So once I opened it up and I did edit, then it's just a matter of going in that field, typing what I want it to be, going into this help text, typing what I want it to be, and then coming here, hitting the select icon and selecting the icon I want it to be. And then once you make that change, now you notice you can do multiple at once, but I'm going to give you a word of caution. Make the change, scroll to the bottom, hit save. Then go and do your, open up the edit. As soon as you hit save, the edit's going to close. But any changes you make, if the system, of course, maybe would kick you out because you're going back and forth and you didn't save it, it's not going to make those changes and you got to start all over. So do a few, hit save, and then go to edit, do a few more, and make your adjustments. But again, it's always a good idea to make your adjustments and make a note of what the original term was called so that we can assist you later. And then right here, are you sure you want to update? So this here is a system message. We're going to talk about those here in a minute. I'm going to say, do I want to update? Yeah. And then it'll make any updates. And then there's my message that popped up there, my toast. It tells me that it's been done. Okay, so that's how easy it is to change control labels. And then the final item we're going to discuss today is managing system messages. So what are system messages? Well, system messages are exactly what I just showed you there. That little message that popped up, that was a system message. The little green message that popped up in the right-hand corner, those are toast messages. You have the ability to change the message that those messages say. So if I go, where is that? Again, Administration Dashboard. And down here to Manage System Messages, I'm going to select that. Here we are. Here is a listing of all of those messages. So I think what was one of those? 117, there's your data has been saved. 116, your settings have been updated. So if you want to change those messages, you can. And it's just a matter of coming over here to the edit and opening up the edit icon and making, this is the type, and then over here typing in your description. The description is what pops up when you're viewing it, and then hit save, and then that will be a change to that message. Now, there's an extreme caution you do want to use on some of our messages that we've got pre-designed. For instance, this one right here, 104. See this little field here in brackets? That's merging to something. If you come in here and hit the edit over here and you remove that, it's not going to have that field in there any longer. It's going to be gone. So we do ask that you do not remove fields from descriptions, because that's telling you this one was a system alert. It says this application name does not appear to be a valid application to clone. That's an important message, because you need to know the name of the application. So that's a merge field that it's looking at when it creates that message. So don't remove those merge fields, or you're going to remove some key data from a specific message. So that is one thing when you're changing system messages, you do want to use caution. And then of course, anytime you make a change, go ahead and hit save, and save the changes that you made. So that's how you do system messages. And I believe that is it for, yep, that is it for the topic. So I will see if any more questions came in, Maureen, and then she can answer those, and then we'll close the session. It's all yours, Maureen.
Thank you, Christine. Okay, we do have a few questions right before closing. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. One of the questions is, can I have separate status detail options for different applications or in each application cycle? No, unfortunately, you cannot have separate ones. Although you can create multiple and use the same, different ones for different applications. But you cannot create one, used it, and then deleted it and then created new ones. So make sure that you add more and use only the relevant ones that are specific to that specific application. Another one is, can I have more than one master template on my site? That is multiple master templates. Let's just say you have 3 programs running, 3 different types of scholarships that are running, or 3 different funds that you're running in your system, and you want to have a master template each for each of these applications. Unfortunately, you cannot do that. There can only be one master template throughout your application. So you want to make sure that the master template is full. It contains all of the questions and sections that are present in all 3 different applications. It should have all the sections, all the questions from all of these applications. So make sure that that is present, but you cannot have multiple master templates on your single site. Another one, and this is the last one, can I delete and create my own system messages? No, you cannot delete and you cannot create new system messages. You can, however, edit, as Christine has shown, and you can see which message to change by looking at the number. When the number pops up, when the message pops up on your screen, please make a note of that number. That's the code. So that's kind of important. As Christine is showing, there's 101, 102, 110, and 109. Make a note of that, and then you can come in here and edit those out. Okay. But you do not have the option. See, you do not have any option of creating or deleting old ones and creating new ones in the system. I think that's it from my side. The rest I will follow up through an email. That's it, Christine. All yours.
Okay.
Thank you,
Perfect. Thank you
everyone.
so much, Maureen. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so that ends our session for today. So, of course, make sure you get a copy of today's handout by going into that handout section if you haven't done so. Hopefully, you can do that within the next second or two before we close the session. But those resources are available. Those give you the links to items in our help guides that will go into more explanation on some of the topics that we covered today. So please make sure to get that so that you have those links available to you. And then as I also, of course, anything that we covered today, if you have any questions about anything, or maybe your processes, maybe you want some adjustments, or maybe you realize your academic years aren't right and you don't want to break anything, feel free to enter a support ticket in Zendesk to ask for support assistance. Or if you want to go over maybe your processes and maybe something you want to incorporate, please feel free to also enter a support ticket into Zendesk and ask for a meeting with a client support specialist, and then someone will assist you in that as well and getting that set up. So again, we want to thank everyone for attending today's session. And like we said, this is part 2, and this is a 3-part series. So the next session we're going to be covering is also going to be items on the administration tab. and it's going to be pertaining to the items that are in regards to setting up profiles, profile-based settings. So I'm setting up user accounts, I'm creating role types, certain things that affect users on your site and how to create profiles, password policies, that sort of thing we'll be covering in the next session, which will be October 22nd. So we've only been doing one a month with vacations. This is a vacation time for us. And so on vacations and illnesses. And so we've only been able to do one a month. And so the next one will be October 22nd. And that'll be part 3 of this 3-part series. So that'll be the final one. And it'll be covering profile-based settings. So watch for that to be coming the beginning of October. The invite for that should be coming so that you can attend that as well. So thank you everyone for your time, and hope everyone has a wonderful week, and we will see everyone on the 22nd for the next webinar. Thank you.